Hidetaka Miyazaki's newest brainchild with From Software, Elden Ring, has taken the gaming realm by storm. Selling 3 million units in its first 3 weeks of its release alone, the game is a gift that keeps on giving. Be it its multiple endings or its never-ending in-game map, this Tolkien-esque venture will keep you entertained or hard-pressed for weeks on end. To make sure that the gameplay doesn't have you over your head, we've brought you a list of mistakes that Elden Ring players need to avoid. Number 10. Procrastinating finding the map fragments. Procrastination is, even in the gaming world, the thief of time. Thus, if you want to get to the bottom of the plotline quickly, you will have to immediately start looking for the missing map pieces. These pieces won't only give you access to newer locations in the lands between, but also help your character level up by fighting or helping the characters stationed around each fragment. While fragments are normally placed around the roadside watchtowers or beacons called stelae, they can be easily missed because of the fog. Therefore, if you spot one, make hay while the sun shines. Each fragment will allow you into a new location that's secrets and loot galore. Nevertheless, you will have to watch out for the keepers and other foes while you're at it. Number 9. Needless healing. Like most other RPGs, Elden Ring also has a customary elixir called the Flask of Crimson Tears. This Chalice of Life inspired feature allows players to mitigate certain effects and also bumps their HP. It can, moreover, be combined with other elixirs like the Flask of Cerulean Tears to buff different stats or character attributes. Think of it like a power-up cocktail, if you will. Nevertheless, obtaining these tears isn't as easy as mixing yourself a drink. While they're commonly found around churches, you don't chance upon a church every now and then. To avoid taking detours for these flasks, it's instead easier to use them mindfully, perhaps against a particularly tough boss character. Similarly, using them in a fight where there's very little ground between you and the opponent is also a bad idea. Keeping in view how the opponent can undo the bump in as little as one hit, the bottom line is drink responsibly. Number 8. Blindly believing player messages. Although a game's multiplayer elements heighten the immersion, sometimes they can be a pain in the neck. The player messages in Elden Ring unfortunately have been hijacked by trolls and fall into the latter category. While it was funny for a while, users are fed up with being misled and missing important clues. Fortunately, however, there's a way to disable these messages. Nevertheless, that comes at the cost of missing out on other online aspects like invaders and summoning. Another way to avoid the trolls getting the better of you is to simply curb your greed. Thus, be wary of the accuracy of certain loot ahead messages and precious items. From what we've discovered from various fan testimonies, an item could very well be a message designed to look like one. Number 7. Hoarding runes won't help. Akin to Souls and its forerunning games, runes help you get around in the lands between. Mainly collected by defeating foes and bosses and auctioning items, this currency allows you to improve your character stats. Weirdly enough, there are some players who believe in amassing the runes instead of using them to level up. While it's justified to save up for the better and naturally more expensive upgrades, you might never get around to that. Simply, and in the tradition of previous games, you lose your runes upon death. Now, even though they can be recovered by going back to the spot where you died, you lose them once and for all if you die a second time. Certain players have also found ways to mine more of these runes by going after the easy targets. Therefore, you can always attain more runes, and that's too quite easily. In particular, the statuesque creatures in the fields around the Bestial Sanctum in the lands of Dragonbarrow are a gold mine of runes and relatively easy to finish off. Number 6. Don't get cheeky with the bosses. This is a no-brainer, but with close to 12 boss fights, all depending on how you navigate the game, you'll have plenty of chances to prove your mettle. Therefore, don't get cocky and go after the big boys right off the bat. Even though you might be able to defeat 1 or 2 bosses by some stroke of luck, they'll leave you compromised for what's next. The more informed decision would be doing side quests till your character has become fit to face the final bosses. In all honesty, going from boss fight to boss fight kind of defeats the purpose of playing a sandbox game, and you're better off playing linear games instead. Number 5. Not summoning spirits. Just like the HP and FP flasks, the Spirit Ash is also a reusable token that comes in handy during difficult run-ins. As its name implies, the Ash helps summon the spirits of other fallen heroes and also much of the fauna of the lands between. From the slow yet steady jellyfish spirit to the mimic tear, which creates an exact copy of the player. Each one of these spirits has something interesting to offer and can be of huge help on a slippery slope. Nevertheless, some players don't use these bad babies till it's very little. The reason being their horrible experiences with aids in other RPGs and even a number of Elden Ring's predecessors. But believe it or not, the Elden Ring aids won't disappoint and are a huge improvement on a posse that stands around and does nothing. Thus, learn to use these spirits early on and you'll have less trouble overcoming some of the demanding demanding bosses, guaranteed. Number 4, death is not the end. Yes, you heard it right. Death is not the end. Rather, it's the means to an end. Briefly, the game is designed to kill off your character. In a situation like this, you can either completely abandon it, or you can try to keep playing the way the developers wanted you to. In simpler terms, use your deaths, for there will be many, like lessons to help you improve. Each time a boss pummels you in the afterlife, take note of your shortcomings and address them by leveling up the next time you're resurrected. Some gamers have also recommended keeping a journal for the game. Now, as daft as that sounds, you'll see the genius behind it early on in the game. Anyhow, journal or no journal, don't let frequent dying cheat you out of enjoying what is otherwise an excellent game. Keep your head, use your ruins intelligently, and keep going. Number 3, choose your class carefully. One of the many areas where the gaming community is divided on the gameplay is the character classes. While some suggest that they don't really matter as long as you're leveling up later on, others think that it'd do you better to do your research before picking a character. Differences aside, there's a wealth of information available on the World Wide Web to help you decide. The game itself has descriptions for each stat or attribute as well. However, it makes sense to choose carefully so that you can go up against certain bosses earlier in the game as opposed to later, and once you've gained the much needed stats to take them down. Decisions. Sadly, if you're already 9 days into the game, the decisions ship has already sailed and possibly sunk as well. Number 2, rack up on resources. Granted that not everything that glitters is gold, but with an open world game like Elden Ring, you can't take chances. Thus, pick up items as frequently as you can. While other games have an inventory limit and only allow for a small number of items, this game only limits picking up the same thing twice. With an inventory full of spells, herbs, and whatnot, you can not only craft things in the game, but also exchange them for runes. It's pretty much a win-win situation, it seems. Number 1, wield your weapons wisely. This applies to most RPGs, but as a game that allows you to modify your weapons on top of wielding 2 of them, Elden Ring might require a little more work. As far as the question of double weapons goes, you need to push a bunch of buttons, the triangle and L1 and R2 depending on the direction, as opposed to the classic triangle. A double-armed player will naturally do more damage. However, there's a caveat regarding defenses here. To elaborate, you won't be able to wield a shield. Again, this isn't a piece of cake, which is why you should practice before you use it on one of the bosses. The modifications, on the other hand, are done by going into the Ashes of War tab. You can then toggle to see how each ash will affect your weapon. This feature is quite something considering how different bosses react differently to different attacks and weapons. The biggest plus to this feature is how you can undo the ash or unenchant your weapon once it has fulfilled its desired purpose. Their impermanence and how easy they are to come by shouldn't, however, influence you to make the wrong choices. Choose wisely so that the odds may always be in your favor. That's a wrap for this video. What point are you at in the gameplay? How much of the lands between have you uncovered? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.